Hey guys, it's your friendly neighborhood reviewer with InToIt Reviews, coming at you with a very special review today. This is the Koss KSC75, and this is a special headphone to the channel because it was the first giveaway item to the neighborhood. And guess what? At 1,000 subs, we're doing it again, and I'll be giving away another set of Koss KSC75s to the subscribers. So let's get into it. The Koss KSC75 is a cheap, open-back, on-ear headphone that looks like it's straight out of the late 1980s or early 1990s. But man, does this thing have the sonic chops. By now, I would assume that most people know about the legendary sound that this thing ironically produces. But if this is your first exposure to the Koss KSC75, man, are you in for a treat. $13 to $20 typically buys you entry to the Koss KSC75 party. And let me say, first and foremost, that although this is not a perfect headphone, it is my belief that everyone should own one of these. Why do you ask? Well, because this little gem has the capacity to teach. It has the ability to show people what the entry point to good head-fi can sound like. Want to know what a great, respectably wide soundstage is? Listen to a Koss KSC75. Want to know what accurate imaging is, with decent spatial placement, adequate separation, satisfactory instrument distinction? Check out a Koss KSC75. The stage is arched from left to right, but it also has what I would call a natural bend to it. There is a good depth to the staging, and the listening seat is a pleasing distance from the stage without pushing the listener too close or too far from it. Vocals are also presented well, with a rather clear and neutral character to them. They are silky smooth and neither too far forward nor too far recessed. The KSC75 does so much right that it's uncanny, especially for a low price point. Because of this, I would say that the Koss KSC75 is a good baseline headphone from which to measure others against it. But like I said, this is not a perfect headphone. There is some grain to the overall presentation, and individual notes lack definition if you pay too close attention to them. Resolution could also be better in general, but for a cheap headphone, these are plenty resolving. You just have to have the proper expectations here given the price point, and these will still blow you away. One should also have appropriate expectations regarding isolation here. These are open back, over ears, and as such there's virtually no isolation. These are great for listening in quiet, solitary environments, and although you can take these on the go, it would compromise the experience in my opinion. So I wouldn't exactly recommend these for the train or a plane or anything of the sort unless you're into irritating yourself and others. Additionally, while microdynamics are pretty good, macrodynamics are rather limited, and outside of the treble frequencies, the global presentation has a certain softness to its general character. In general, the Koss KSC75 has a mid-forward sound with elevated treble and audiophile levels of bass. While these certainly have the potential to turn bass heads into treble heads, it would be overly kind to call the treble splashy. In fact, I would say that the treble can be somewhat problematic at times, as there are peaky bits here or there which escalate a little too high for me and grate on my nerves over time, becoming fatiguing to my ears over the course of a day or so. I would not call these shouty per se, but there is some particular shout here or there, and this is mostly what vexes me with this particular Koss. When it comes to the KSC75, I can usually tolerate its treble for about a day or so, give or take, and then I want to switch to something else with a more overall neutral and pleasing sound signature. But if you are a treble head, the Koss KSC75s will most likely be right up your alley, as its other attributes are mostly top-notch. If you are a bass head, you might find these lacking, however. In their stock formation, with the attached ear hooks, the bass is generally less emphasized, and dare I say it, rather one-note or thuddy. Despite these criticisms, the bass is also rather fast and audiophile-like. Swapping out the ear hooks for a headband of some sort results in a bit more low-end representation and increased wearability over time, but you will sacrifice a small amount of stage by doing this. Yaxi pads, while not sonically necessary with the Koss KSC75, sure as hell do increase the comfort when using a headband. Unlike its cousins, the Koss KPH30i and the Koss PortaPro, the KSC75 commonly sounds just as good off of a phone as it does off the right amplifier to my ear. In general, I'd say that you need to be particularly careful to not overdrive the Koss KSC75, as its problematic treble can become aggressively overemphasized, and you might induce grain and distortion at both its upper and lower limits if you give it too much juice. If I'm gonna grab one of my 3 budget Koss headphones to take with me to work, I tend to reach for the Koss KSC75 if I have a treble bug or if my portable amplifier lacks a charge. In other words, if I'm simply relying on my phone's amplification power, then the Koss KSC75 is my pick between these 3. Having said that, there is always an exception to the rule, and in the course of this review, I was privileged to discover that the Gold Note DS-10 with the Koss KSC75 is a special pairing. The honeyed tones of the DS-10 tame the treble just enough to smooth out the sound signature, and still it retained the KSC75's other sonic capabilities. Plus, I didn't think these could produce much sub-bass, but there is a decent representation there with the Gold Note. But what crazy person, besides me, is going to pair a $13 headphone with a $3,000 amplifier? I'm not suggesting that any sane person go out and buy a DS-10 only for the Koss KSC75, but if you're lucky enough to already own this rare breed of amplifier, definitely give this pairing a listen, as it's most enjoyable to do so. More realistically, one might consider pairing the Koss KSC75 with FiiO's BTR 3K. This is a tiny low-powered DAC amp and Bluetooth receiver, which produces neutral tones and sufficient power to drive the KSC75 nicely, without causing any real sonic pitfalls, increasing acoustic spatiality, depth, extensiveness, and harmonic richness instead. At approximately the cost of $70 US, the BTR 3K represents a more realistic option to enhance the KSC75 and add use case versatility to it. And before I go, just the final reminder that I'm giving away another set of Koss KSC75s at the 1K subscriber mark. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe here. And then check out the Patreon, Twitter, the blog, and Instagram on the interwebs as well. And with that, I'm out for now.